multi-stakeholder forum. Now we have our Anticipatory Action Regional Dialogue. It's great to have you all here.
Exactly. We've really seen anticipatory action being peppered throughout various sessions of this whole entire forum. So it's really great to have this dedicated session today. Oh, we're getting told to come closer together. It's really great to have this session dedicated today just to this conversation and purely diving in to what anticipatory action is about through the lens of governments. And what do we have to look forward to today, Raymond?
Well, maybe should we... Who are we? Should we introduce ourselves?
Great way to start. Hi everyone, my name is Catherine Jones. I lead the Anticipatory Action Program for FAO, and I also co-lead the Asia Pacific Technical Working Group with Raymond.
Yes, I'm Raymond. I work for I4C. I'm the regional coordinator for Anticipatory Action. And I also co-lead our Asia Pacific Technical Working Group on AA.
And we've seen a really great growth of this technical working group, which I think signifies really clearly how anticipatory action is becoming really important in the disaster risk management conversation. So, we've got to stay close together.
Yeah,
I forget that.
close together, yes.
We like to drift, you know. But for instance, we started this group in 2019.
Yeah.
All those years ago, and I remember it was about 7 or 8 people just discussing anticipatory action, where it could go. Now, where are we at in this year, 2024?
I mean, now we have over 20 organizations at the regional level, so 20 organizations working on anticipatory action. If we actually look at the anticipatory action programs that we have, right, we just did a mapping. We have 137 anticipatory action protocols or projects in Asia Pacific, which is amazing.
Huge. Yeah. It's amazing. So, yeah, exactly. Thank you, Vera. So we really have this really growing area of work that we're just seeing expand and expand and expand. So this dedicated conversation today is we, of course, seen anticipatory action expand through the partner lens. But I think we all, as partners, have an ambition to encourage governments, support governments, and to see anticipatory action for and by them moving forward. So today is going to be dedicated to that exact topic. So it's a very long session, 2.5 hours, so I hope you're really buckled in, ready to go. Don't worry, it won't be all panel speakers. We have some great panel speakers with us today, though, from all the way from the Pacific to Mongolia to Pakistan. So really grateful for all those government officials who are joining us today to give us our insights, but we've also got some really interactive elements too. And that will be 2 panel discussions and some group work as well at the end. But do we want to kick off with the first activity just to get everyone a little bit warmed up?
Yeah, so you see some sticky notes on your tables. Oh yeah, we actually have a slide for that as well.
Is it changed?
We would like to ask you, so where do you see anticipatory action in 10 years' time? We already know 5 years ago we were at a very different point, you know. Now we're here, but where are we going to be in 10 years' time? It can just be a very short reflection, a word, can be a word or a little phrase. Where would it be, or where do you want it to be? We'll come back to that then later again.
Exactly. So if you can spend the next 5 to 10 minutes with those sticky notes, with those pens on your table, or pens, sorry, my New Zealand accent does not say that word correctly, and write down, where do you see anticipatory action in 10 years? We'd love to hear your thoughts on this. So you have a couple of minutes now to reflect on this, and we'll see how true this is when we speak to governments throughout the session. I'm taking the silence as everyone's thinking really hard.
But we're going to come in 1 minute to one of your tables.
So rapid fire, essentially, this is what this is. right, should we go into the crowd? Let's go. All right, we're coming
Okay.
for you now.
Yep, we're coming.
We hope I'll survey as well, just to see. I see people still scribbling, so I won't, annoy them too much.
Is there a table who would like to volunteer? We just want one intervention.
Anyone would like to volunteer? Oh, we've got one here, Raymond.
Okay.
Oh, coming through. Can you introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Tasneem Siddiqui from Bangladesh, University of Dhaka. I thought that in 10 years, because I work on displaced people, so I would like to see displaced people are organized, they have their own associations, then there is no more displacement, infrastructure and others are properly built, and relocation plans are very much right-based.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Yeah, really good to hear that connection with anticipatory action and displacement. Do we have one more volunteer? Oh, I've got someone close here, and there's one person behind you. Oh, we've got
Okay,
a lot.
Right.
You go first, Raymond, and I'll
I see
then
over
put some
there,
here.
yes. Okay. Yes, please. Just introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name is Hương. I'm from the Vietnam Disaster and Management Authority. I think that in the next 10 years, we do hope that each government will have the reserve fund, a dedicated budget for the anticipatory actions.
Very good. Exactly. The financing topic
great.
has been something of very much importance of a lot of governments these days. Thank you so much. Sir, would you like to share yours?
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Nico Anastasia from the Philippines, from the College of Public Affairs and Development. So in 10 years from now, I am hoping that the anticipatory action will be more gender responsive, and involvement of indigenous cultural communities are actually more involved or better in the next 10 years. Thank you.
Great.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
That links very well. There was a session just before on...
Exactly. And keep these close, because we
Yep.
will be asking a few more people. I see a few more hands. Don't worry, I've got you. We'll come to you in between the different panel sessions as well. But because of time, we have to kick off with our first panel discussion, which is really exciting. We've got 3 different speakers. From Mongolia, from Fiji, and the Philippines. So I would like Kolu Basaran, Miss Prashika, and Miss Irene to join us on the stage, if that's okay.
Yeah, please join us on the stage. Yeah.
Cool. Well, I will join. We're just going to, frame you. I hope that the camera people don't mind that we're standing on either side. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us today. I think it really, we're wanting to hear, as we're mentioning, government's perspectives on anticipatory action. But we won't want to talk too much now. We'll hand the floor to you. And I think to kick us off, Miss Irene, we actually have you first. Can you tell us a little bit about how, particularly, I know you've been working you work with the Department of Social Welfare and Development, and we've seen some really interesting work come through from your agency, particularly lately looking at shock responsive social protection and the operational and financing that has been involved with that as well. One of the, I think, leading in the world. So we're very keen to hear from your experience and what you've been managing to do and what you're looking forward to achieving over the next few years. So over to you, Ms. Irene.
Yeah, certainly, Catherine. Thank you very much for those questions. I'd like to begin by saying that the Philippines, particularly the Department of Social Welfare and Development, recognizes that investments in social protection actually diminish because of the impact of severe weather disturbances. And disasters actually undermine the development efforts from the national to the household level. We've always recognized that in the events of disasters, the rich and poor affected, but the poor suffer disproportionately. That is why it is in that context that the Philippines, particularly the Department of Social Welfare and Development, has integrated anticipatory action in our disaster risk reduction initiatives. Investments in anticipatory action in the Philippines have been considered using the Social Protection Plan. We have recognized that anticipatory action can actually inform our planning. And one of the things that we have done, of course, is to identify we have invested in a more robust science and technology capabilities. So we have bolstered our forecasting capabilities by enabling more, so that we could have more accurate weather predictions to inform anticipatory action planning. The policy environment has reinforced the roles of the Philippine Atmospheric, Geophysical, and Astronomical Services Administration and the Philippine Space Agency, while enhancing technological and operational capacities to deliver timely, precise, and dependable monitoring, forecasting, and warning services. These are vital information that we have, that we need to have so that our actions will be properly guided. So the Philippines has implemented science-driven strategies to execute proactive initiatives. For instance, the Department of Social Welfare and Development has employed technology for risk information, impact-based forecasting, and early warning systems as trigger mechanisms to activate and execute one of the pilot programs that we have implemented, which is the Be Spared, or the Building on Social Protection for Anticipatory Action and Response in Emergencies and Disasters. In its pilot implementation, the Be Spared aimed to address the impact of floods, typhoons, and drought. And through this program, we were able to provide social safety nets and provide capacity building activities for our targeted beneficiaries. The same strategy was used with the Central Emergency Response Fund Anticipatory Action, where we provided anticipatory cash assistance to children residing in typhoon-prone provinces before the impact of a tropical cyclone. Similarly, the local adaptation for water access and breaking insufficiency through nutritious harvest for the impoverished utilized the climate change outlook of the Department of Science and Technology to address issues of water scarcity and food insecurity during extreme dry spells. So in anticipatory action initiatives, we recognize as well that a dependable social registry is crucial to facilitate targeted interventions. In fact, the Philippines, through the Department of Social Welfare and Development, utilizes the listahanan, or the National Targeting Household, a national targeting system for poverty reduction, as a targeting tool to identify households most vulnerable to massive flooding, frequently visited by typhoons, and severely affected by drought, for the implementation of the programs I've earlier mentioned, the Be Spared, the SURF, and the LAWA at Binhi. The Philippines also implements a community-based monitoring system to gather updated, disaggregated data for targeting beneficiaries. We recognize that these information systems enable government agencies to quickly pinpoint the most vulnerable families, individuals, and communities that may be severely affected by various disasters. Anticipatory action initiatives are implemented among these targeted populations to support them in preventive and mitigation measures. Another important aspect that we are really very conscious of is multi-sectoral collaboration. It is vital for anticipatory action initiatives. The Philippines foster partnerships and cultivates relationships with various stakeholders. For the Be Spared and the LAWA and Binhi, the government, through the DSWD, has worked with partners to strengthen the pre-disaster risk assessment conducted by the local government units. The LGUs are actively engaged in the assessment process to evaluate the need to activate contingency plans, thereby ensuring the inclusion of anticipatory actions in their local disaster management plans. Technical assistance is also provided by other government agencies that possess the technical expertise to execute anticipatory action without necessarily reinventing the wheel, but leveraging existing mechanisms. This collaborative action also demonstrates cohesiveness in action. And the support, of course, from our developmental partners, such as the UN-FAO, the UNICEF, the UN World Program, are highly valued. Most important is the active involvement, of course, of disaster-affected populations. That is why program beneficiaries of the Department of Social Welfare Development are given information and are capacitated through one of the initiatives of the department, which is the Family Development Sessions of the Pantawid Pamilyang Pilipino Program, or the Philippine Conditional Cash Transfer. Government support and policy framework are crucial in implementing the SURF, the BSPARE, the LAWA and BINHI, and other anticipatory action initiatives. While there is an ongoing legislative action to establish an enabling law for anticipatory action, the government, through the DSWD, has integrated anticipatory action into the adoptive and shock-responsive social protection plan. This effort to integrate social protection into disaster risk reduction and climate change action actually enables our department to leverage climate financing mechanisms. While doing this, of course, the government, through the DSWD, is very grateful for the generous donor support. So with multi-sectoral collaboration, mechanisms that are being extended to us through our international development partners, and having science-based and impact-based forecasting, coupled, of course, with a dependable and reliable social registry, has really enabled our department to implement anticipatory action initiatives, Catherine.
Thank you so much, Irene. A round of applause. That's a really great, I think, way of framing anticipatory action and really showcasing the importance of social protection for the I can never say this word, how do you say it, Raymond? Operationalization? That's how,
Operationalization,
Thank
yes.
you, sir. And financing of anticipatory action and the power of social registries too. So really, thank you, Irene, for that interesting insight into that critical kind of theme. Raymond, over to you for our next speaker.
Yeah, we wanted to go to the National Disaster Management Office in Fiji. Sorry, going the opposite way from the list there. We are wondering a bit, how is anticipatory action advancing in Fiji? On the one hand, you have the SURF from the UN SURF, Central Emergency Response Fund's anticipatory action framework. There's also other actors, the Fiji Red Cross and others who are implementing anticipatory action. But how is it being implemented and financed in Fiji? Is there anything you can tell us what has worked well? Are there any funding streams in particular that you would like to mention? But yeah, to give us a bit a flavor of how AA is working in Fiji.
Isambula Binaka, ladies and gentlemen. I believe Fiji is the first country in the Pacific to pilot anticipatory action for tropical cyclones. We have been working very closely with the United Nations Office for Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, UNOCHA, in getting this AA framework developed for Fiji. And this process has required a robust consultation with our national stakeholders that work with us in the disaster management space, and also liaising very closely with our local meteorological office. The framework itself was endorsed by government last year. We were fortunate we didn't get to test this pilot project last year because our cyclone season last year was a quiet one for us. But we are really looking forward to lessons learned from this pilot project itself, which will basically pen out how Fiji envisages itself to invest more on anticipatory action project. For the pilot project itself, we have used the key building blocks of anticipatory action, which includes first using forecasting, getting the pre-identified triggers done. As I've mentioned earlier, we've been working very closely with the UN OCHA humanitarian data team and our local meteorological office and with the NDMO in getting the triggers identified correctly. Secondly is the pre-agreed activities. We have been working very closely with the national government agencies that work in the activities that we have identified as part of this pilot project, which includes water sanitation and hygiene, food security, and livelihood, health and nutrition, education, safety and protection, and shelter. The UN agencies that are part of this anticipatory action project are working very closely with our national cluster leads to make sure that these activities are well defined, making sure that it's effective, and making sure that it's sustainable when it's implemented. Thirdly is the pre-arranged financing, as my colleague Raymond has mentioned. For this project itself, the funding is coming through the Central Emergency Response Fund. We were fortunate to get about $2 million approved for this project. So basically, once the pre-identified triggers are met, these finance can be immediately dispersed through the UN agencies in two different categories. First is the readiness trigger, second is the activation trigger, action trigger rather. So in the readiness trigger, which is basically approximately 122 hours before impact, that gives the opportunity to the agencies to activate 15% of the financing that is provided. And then once the action trigger is met, they can fully utilize this. So those are the three key components that has been basically the rationale behind the framework. Moving forward to one of the key things that we have made sure in this entire process is community sensitization, because anticipatory action can, actually that's something that I would like the forum to also discuss and let us know if it's something that will undermine community resilience or rather complement. In this process, we, the Fijian government, have been working very closely with our partners in UN OCHA to make sure that the activities that we have already identified are defined in such a way that complements the existing systems and processes and not undermines whatever the communities have already in place. So that's very briefly on the anticipatory action project that we are currently implementing in Fiji. Apart from that, the Fijian government is also investing into disaster risk financing modality, which also contains components of anticipatory action. And obviously this work will get its cue from the pilot project that we are having with UN OCHA.
Good. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's great to see. I'm very happy that you actually mentioned the three building blocks of anticipatory action, right, which come through in the ASEAN AA framework, but also in our technical standards that we have at the regional level in the framework. It's great. And you already posed a question, so we'll come back to your question later as well.
Exactly. So the questions will come in a little bit, and it'll make a bit of sense in a minute. But yeah, thank you so much to Prishinka for that. And I think what we're seeing between Fiji and the Philippines too, just wanting to highlight a cool fact, is that both of you have taken anticipatory action to your parliaments and been really, getting the different members on board and sensitising your governments to anticipatory action as well through the bill that's going through the state at the moment and being drafted, as well as approving your anticipatory action framework. So congratulations to the both of you on that institutional aspect as well. Yeah, it's great news and seeing that move forward. But also thinking of anticipatory action and implementing it, Mongolia, you have a really interesting example that I think will be a lot of people will be eager to hear. You have what's called a zud. So a zud, for maybe those who don't know, is a very cold winter, lots of snow, lots of ice, and that can be very detrimental to your main livestock industry. But you've made some great strides when it comes to anticipatory action in your country. So Colonel Basarunan, I'm going to hand the floor to you to give us a little bit of an insight into the Mongolian experience.
Thank you. Thanks. Good afternoon. So I'd like to first introduce, in Mongolia, the agriculture sector is the second largest economy pillar of Mongolia, which produce 13.3% of the total GDP. Livestock is the cornerstone stone of its economy, providing the sole income for 35% of the herdsmen households. So in Mongolia, nomadic and herdsman households are 189,000 households with 70 million livestock living in that harsh and cold and icy winter. Between 1940 and 2023, because of the climate change and global warming, the average temperature has been increased by 2.9%, which directly impacts on those herdsman households living in the countryside, stranded in the mountains, and that causes a heavy drought and dry summer during the summertime, which actually causes less pasture reserve, and less living opportunity for the livestock and animals. So 1999 and 2000, we have experienced a very severe drought where we lost 7.6 million livestock. And 2009 and 10, we lost 9.2 million livestock, where we didn't have the anticipatory action in place, where we didn't actually do the risk assessment and evidence-based based forecasting. And last year, or this year, 2024, we have experienced the largest ever drought in Mongolia. So as for your information, as Catherine has mentioned, drought is actually a severe winter condition that causes famine to both herdsman families as well as for the livestock. So if the livestock starts to die with like 9 million, 10 million, the household families, they would also face famine, a severe famine in our country. So in terms of this year, the great drought we have experienced, we had so many difficulties in terms of helping and reaching out those vulnerable communities. In terms of anticipatory action, I would like to say 4 steps. First step is evidence-based forecasting. What we have done in terms of this year is that we have predicted the first signal starting from the summer, not winter. So winter starts in October, November, and December, and January, February, that continues. And before that, in the summertime, we produce the drought risk assessment and drought map, basing on the information of the meteorological agency. So that gives us a very good signal where would be the risk area, where would be the drought. And where there's a drought, there will be a drought in the winter. So we started our research, or we started our anticipatory action in summer, basing on those information. So when it comes to September, we have actually sent out a government task force, including the members from the UNFAO, UNRC office. We have sent the government task force right to the field to see the real situation in those areas, whether if the grass is enough for the livestock, whether if the pasture land is enough, whether if it's degraded, or if it's degraded, how many common pooled resources in terms of pasture land is degraded. Secondly, we have actually, second step is to target the communities that are at risk. So who are at risk? Of course, those who lost livestock in the previous drought, or those who couldn't have enough pasture resources in the summertime, or those who have no human resources, those who have low income. So we have targeted those people at risk. And this is a very detailed identification and of vulnerable communities. And then we have also considered why those people are at risk, what would be the maternity health issue, what would be the child protection issue, if there are any child abandoned from school or families. So all these perspectives, like social perspectives, we had to consider. The third step is actually the anticipatory action. That's where we actually take action. So how we take action? We rely on the government resources. We have the contingency fund and warehouses where we have hay and fodder resources. So if the herder households, if they couldn't do the reserve and the stockpiling, government helps them in the summertime, in the autumn time, to give them hay and fodder. Of course, we have identified our risk communities, so we give them the hay and fodder that would really help them with the existential survival risk. So that way that they can be survived of the winter with the government-funded hay and fodder. In addition, as part of the anticipatory action, we give them the cash transfer, early cash transfer. So giving them a cash transfer for those herdsman households in the stranded mountains and areas, they can get their hay and fodder, they can get their medical supplies So that will help them to survive the entire minus 35, 40 degrees winter in Mongolia. So the last but not least, the step is that financing. So where we get the financing. A very good example of FAO is that FAO has actually given not only the cash transfer, but also they do the purchase of the animals and meats before the animals starts to die. So they get the meat and then they give the offsetting. You know, they do the offsetting and they give the meats to the urban population that are in need of food and in famine. So the risk financing would be a very important, of course. First of all, the state has to fund it. Secondly, the HCT, the humanitarian country team, has to fund it. And of course, the search fund, as we have mentioned before, all these funding mechanisms needs to be mobilized. And also the emergency operations center we have established. You know, there's silos between organizations are very problematic. So we need to consider establishing a combined, coherent, holistic operations center, and we plan all the action in terms of responding to drought and winter in Mongolia. So in terms of drought planning or contingency planning, we consider early warning first, yeah? In terms of like how we can communicate this information to the people in need, especially sparse population, you know, living in a far places. Sometimes the places are not even possible to reach, and then that anticipatory action needs to be continued. And it's a very important to mention that we have predicted the loss of this winter would be 21 million livestock, but the actual loss is 8.1 million livestock, which is triple minimized. That's how much we minimize the losses, reduce the losses. Twice and 3 times of the losses we have prevented by implementing the anticipatory action. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Colonel. And I think what's a really interesting element in your story is the fact that the government used that state and fodder reserves and reduced that to 50% to enable herders who are the most at risk to access that through government resources. So it's been fantastic to see all 3 of our speakers today really connect with the government systems and seeing how it's been moving through. So thank you so much for those key insights. Before you leave the stage, now everyone here, we've seen a lot of sessions, haven't we, Raymond, throughout the last few days, and the Q&A usually happens with the audience going to the speakers. But we're switching that up. We think the governments deserve to hear from you, the crowd. We've got experts, we've got people who've been working on this for a long time. In this, I see familiar faces, but we've also got experts in disaster risk reduction and disaster risk management here as well. So yeah, we're going to flip the script, aren't we, Raymond?
Yeah, right. We have a full room of experts from all the different organizations here. So we wanted to do a Q&A where the governments can ask you questions. Especially how, from your government perspective, right, are there specific things that you think could be done better or more coordinated, or what can be done so that anticipation is more coordinated or improved or delivered better?
Exactly, and we have a wonderful bunch of volunteers that are sitting at the table. So can the volunteers just stand up for a second, because they deserve a big kind of g'day, as we would say. Here we go, volunteers. So you'll see these volunteers. Let's give them a round of applause because they're amazing. If you don't have one at your table, we'll make sure that they come around, don't worry. And they've been instructed to take the questions from our government counterparts in the panel today. And as we head into the later part of the afternoon, we're going to be decoding these questions. And I'd like to hand the floor back to you. I think you already stated your question, but do you mind reiterating that for the lovely Sarah who will be taking it on board?
Sure, Catherine. I think I would love to understand based on your understanding, do you think anticipatory action is undermining community resilience? If yes, then why? If no, then what are the components? Oh, sorry, if it's a yes, then what are you as agencies recommending for governments to consider when developing anticipatory action projects? And if it's a no, then why do you think so?
Thanks so much. And Miss Irene.
Yeah, Catherine, thank you very much. Actually, there are a lot of questions I have in mind right now. But, well, of course, I wanted to maximize the presence of our technical experts in this room. So, what I really wanted to ask our experts is, there are a lot of community-based community-based knowledge and local practices that, of course, we have to respect. We have to fully recognize. But, of course, we recognize also that there are new technologies on board. So how can we better integrate community-based knowledge and local practices with advanced technology and data analytics to create more effective, more inclusive, and adaptive disaster risk management strategies, especially for the marginalized and high-risk areas?
Perfect. That is a very interesting question, yes, the conversation, how we can really integrate all the different types of risk information and knowledge that we have. Yes. Good. And then maybe as a last one, we would hand over to you.
Thank you. So loss and damage, my question would be on loss and damage, how we can actually accurately assess loss and damage if we cannot measure, we cannot quantify, and we cannot do the impact-based forecasting. So my question would be how we can improve the loss and damage assessments in terms of the impact-based forecasting in order to accurately do the anticipatory action. Thank you.
That's a great question, a very technical one. So the team here, you've got your hands full with that one. That'll be good. Thank you so much, speakers. We really appreciate your time and your insights today. Can I please have one last round of applause? Thank you. So what do we have next, Raymond?
Okay, so now this was our first panel. We'll give you a bit of a different flavor, I guess. We want to hear a bit more from youth, how they experience anticipatory action. I have also a slide for that.
Exactly. So we've heard from governments, but we wanted to also get the new generation part of this conversation as well and bring some new and maybe innovative insights into things we don't think about and what they're facing as young people ahead of natural hazards and what we've got 3 countries, Fiji, India and the Philippines, and some great youth who are, I'm really impressed by them. I would not have been confident enough to do this at their age, so really well done. I'd like to invite to the floor, first of all, Mr. Gabriel Binganana Vanaka to present his story. So it's a storytelling session where we'll be hearing from the youth, your perspectives of and your experiences of natural hazards, but also what you think early warning and anticipatory action can do. Over to you, Gabriel.
Good evening, everyone. For my story this afternoon, I'll begin with a reflection. If you can all visualize, I didn't bring any pictures or videos because my story is a lived reality. And from where I'm from, disasters is an everyday thing. It was during the Christmas Eve of 2019 when Tropical Cyclone Sarai came to Fiji. We had attended a family reunion in an island where I share maternal links to. So it's where my mom was from. And as we had finished all of our occasions in the Christmas week, we were prepared to head back to Suva, which is the capital. As we headed to the wharf to wait for the boat, I heard news that there was a cyclone coming, and that was Cyclone Sarai. It was Category 2. But the information provided to us at that time by the government was really not clear. And so the boats that were supposed to take us across were cancelled. And as we made our way back to the village in the middle of the night, there were very strong winds And we took the risk to put up shelters. Some of my family members were injured because of the flying debris. After 2 days of heavy rain, some of our crops were destroyed, and these were the ones that we heavily relied on. They were destroyed because of the flooding from all the rain. After Tropical Cyclone Serai, we thought it was all over, and so we were prepared to head back to mainland. But then on New Year's Eve, another tropical cyclone came. It was Tropical Cyclone Tino, which was also Category 2. But this time there were no heavy rain, but only strong winds. We were lucky to find some food, but these were already uprooted and displaced by the strong winds. But the thing I want to stress for us today is that the key problem for me during that time was understanding the information provided to us by the government. And so today I stand before you, and I would like to tell you on how, as a young person, I have worked on anticipatory action through the Fiji Council of Social Services, which I know Madam from Fiji government knows that Fiji Council of Social Services is one of the local stakeholders. We have provided contingency plans for emergency response, and that is training young people and elderly people to understand the safe and hazard areas, which include the evacuation routes. And back at home, we know, and I know all of you know, there's preparedness, response, and then recovery. But we have preparedness, onslaught, then response. So onslaught is usually when the disaster hits. And through our anticipatory action, we have sent cash vouchers as a way to help communities to buy their tie-down items, and these vouchers are non-refundable. Even if the disasters come back, we don't tell our communities to give back money. But it is important to understand that even though we have anticipatory action, crisis cannot be entirely prevented. But as a testament of good practice, I want to stand here today and share with all of you, I know that there are agencies and government representatives. The government of Fiji has recently passed Bill 6, which is the National Disaster Risk Management Act. They have removed the old act, and this new act has strengthened community participation in disaster response and preparedness. It has become the enabling environment for our communities and all our vulnerable groups. In this act, under Schedule 7, it states that for all community disaster risk management, community disaster risk management committees, there must be all groups from all aspects. So we have the women, we have the youth, we have our friends from the LGBT community involved. And this is only because we as young people, we do not want to be mere beneficiaries of the process, but we also want to be involved in anticipatory action. And so because we are all here today, my two key recommendations, and something I really want to ask from all of you, is to please have young people involve and effectively engage young people in disaster risk, data research, and policy development. And when I say this, I plead with all of you. There's a difference between involving and engaging young people. And also to create spaces where youths are able to discuss and relate their experiences on disaster risk reduction in whatever way they can. This is how young people like me back home, through highlighting our vulnerabilities, have been heard and can now contribute and be effectively part of anticipatory action. Thank you.
Vanaka, Gabrielle, and thank you so much. We definitely, I think, need to take those recommendations to heart and how we plan anticipatory action moving forward. So thank you for that clear pathway, Gabrielle.
Yeah, it's really not just a story, it's a lived reality. It's really, really great that you were able to share that with us. Yes, we can really do and should do better with that as well. Good, we want to also give space to our next youth, who is Miss Jacqueline Lippi from India. If you want to join us on the stage.
Come on up. And we've got a PowerPoint. Hey, there we go. I'll get you the little, as my mum would call, a dit. Do you want this? Yeah. Do you want me to hold it? You can feel just to hold it. Good evening, everyone. May I please request if the music could be played? Okay. I'm counting one moment. Okay, before the time they count their one moment. So good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. I'm Jacqueline from Assam, India, the eastern part of India. And today I would be sharing my experiences with floods and would like to take you to my home country, Assam. So straighten your seat back, fasten your seatbelt, and let's fly to Assam. But remember, we are in the month of April now, April 2024. So we are a land of the river Brahmaputra, the river which is shared between China, Bhutan, India, and Bangladesh. And we say it Brahmaputra, but you would hear many different names in China and Bangladesh. We are also, so those are my obsessed pictures with the sun. We are also famous for tea, the Assam tea. That's the picture from my grandmom's place. So I'm making it very famous. Again, obsessed with green and the sun. This picture is also from my grandmom's place. We are famous for rice. Yes, please play the video, or play the music, please. So you'll hear the Assam beats. So our main beats is the bihu. And we are obsessed with rice. And this is a mango plant. So I will come back why I am showing you the mango plant. And this is the bihu dance. So this is by the community women where my aunt and my mom is part of. I'm making them world famous now. And next this is the most traditional attire our moms, our aunts wear every day with a flower as a headgear. So this is about how my place looks like. But moving on from April, we experience the floods as now a monsoon has set. So I have been experiencing flood since my childhood. My family has been relocated due to the erosion caused by the floods. So I need to move my school because of the erosion. It was a difficult phase for me when I was just 5 years old. I need to find my new friends. I need to adjust to the new circumstances and the new situations. This is a story of many Assamese children and youth as we experience floods each year. So what's the government is doing to the recurring floods? That's the most million-dollar question. The flood-affected population always receive the emergency response, the relief from the government. And we have adapted it so well as the flood water rises. We take all your necessary belongings, our livestock, and could leave to the shelter. We also have one saying when I come back to the picture on the mango plant, which I have been hearing from my grandmom, is the more the mango plant flowers, the higher would be the flood water level.
But the question is, with the climate change, there is a difference in the season when the mango flowers are blooming. There's also one observation, I think that would need a robust scientific research, but that's my personal observation. The mango plant this year, okay, imagine this is a mango plant. The left side haven't flowered. It's only the right side which is flowering. And in some trees, it hasn't flowered at all. And a few mango plants are full of flowers. So is it because of the climate change, or is it because now we are using a lot of hybrid plants, hybrid samplings? So that's a question that I have no answer, but this is just my observations. So the meaning why I'm saying this is we really need to now validate, do we accept those traditional knowledge which my grandmom has passed on to me? We need to try to validate with the scientific knowledge, because those are the things that our grandmoms has observed, but they are changing with the climate change, with the new things. The question which also strikes me is that if the flood is hit each year, what is the action that government is taking other than the emergency response and recovery? Do we have plans to reduce the risks and build resilience? With the community, as we just are left to just receive the emergency response, with time we have started living with it. We accepted it that the time period from July to September, mid-September, we would be facing floods and we would live with it. As a child, we have been seeing floods as part of our life, and we know the time, and we know that the necessary things we have to carry and move to a shelter. However, is it a good idea to accept that each year we would be facing floods and move to the shelter, and then when the water recedes, we come back? Is it good to accept that nothing could be done, and we would live with it each day? I leave that question to our audience. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. That was another inspiring story.
Exactly, and taking us into the context of floods as well, and hearing about your family's kind of background and how you've been reading those early warning signs as well. So it was really great to hear that. Thank you so much. We now have our last youth to join us today. So we've been to Fiji, we've been to India. We're now coming back home to the Philippines. Rex, Vincent, welcome you to the stage to share your story.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. By the way, I'm Rex, Youth Leadership Academy Ambassador from the Philippines under the Plan Pilipinas and Plan International Asia Pacific. So I'm here to share my experiences of climate change and our anticipatory action, but it is a youth and local-based perspective. So I have video presentation. Okay, sorry. So I'm giving you a background of my community. I live in a coastal area in Eastern Samar, and it is surrounded by the Pacific Ocean and the Leyte Gulf. And every month, we are always visited by typhoons. But aside from that, we are experiencing unpredicted weather conditions. Just last summer, we experienced 40 to 45 degrees Celsius, and that's alarming for our region who always experience rainy season whole year in the past decade. This climate change that we face in our community contribute a lot of climate anxiety to the children and to my fellow youth, where it adds burden to their studies and everyday living. Sometimes, schools are forced to cancel classes because of too hot weather, and it gives a lot of stress to the student. They don't even have time to play outside and do the things they used to do. We feel that we are already living in the new normal, but it's not normal at all because of the struggles we face because of this continuing climate change. The question is, how can we lessen the impact of disaster? Yes, we can use early warning system, early warning information, and anticipatory. But its impact and significance depends on the action that we take. Did you know that when a disaster and climate change events happen, our children and youth rights on education, on food, on shelter and protection are endangered? But how can we lessen the vulnerabilities of our children and youth to this disaster? Yes, through empowerment of them. But we need to prepare and act early, right? And if we want to build a resilient, adaptive, and disaster-ready communities, we must recognize that anticipatory action works. Because if we can anticipate the impact of an upcoming disaster, especially typhoons, it's better to respond before it strikes. In Salcedo, my municipality, we have this anticipatory action project called BEREDI Project. BEREDI stands for Building Resilient, Adaptive, and Disaster-Ready Project, which aims to protect the vulnerable households through a cash transfer program. Yes, because this project believes and recognizes that during a crisis, food is not the only needs of the people. The people needs also sanitation, medicine, hygiene, asset protection, and even livelihood. And money is an efficient way to meet these diverse needs. Because with cash in hand, our families have the flexibility to decide how best to prepare for a disaster. BEREDI also capacitate the youth through their engagement on workshop, training related to DRR preparedness and response. Despite of being vulnerable of the youth and children to all kinds of hazards and disasters, the youth is already doing and engaged in advocacies and initiatives related to disaster risk reductions and climate actions. Just like basic life support workshop, just shown in the video, the typhoon and earthquake drills, mangrove reforestation, and sexual reproductive health and rights seminars. Those are just some of the youth-led and early action and anticipatory action that we do. Did you know that during typhoons, our coastline are prone to storm surge, just like what happened in Tacloban City after the Typhoon Haiyan? They don't anticipate the storm surge. That's why the loss and damages was a nightmare. And if we anticipate storm surges, and if we protect our mangrove areas, maybe we can lessen the impact of storm surge. And did you know that during and after a disaster, our women, youth, and children are the most vulnerable in the evacuation area? Yes, evacuation area is not a safe space for our women during and after disaster. And if we can anticipate that this scenario will happen, maybe we can lessen the gender-based violence that can happen in the evacuation area. This is why it is important and critical to integrate gender-responsive and inclusive measures into the disaster risk reduction plans. Because in disaster preparedness affects every sector, and it requires a multi-sectoral approach. The youth, women, elderly persons with disability, and other vulnerable sectors must be included in planning and policy making. Gender equality disability and social inclusion, or JIDC, should also be integrated in our DRR plans and policies. Because this is what our community wants to happen. And this is our call for action. Because we believe that in disaster, no one should be left behind. And if we think and act early together, we can save more lives. Thank you. Just for the information of everybody, my NGO, the Plan International Asia Pacific, is launching a project titled Protection, Gender and Inclusion and Anticipatory Action. If you want to know about this project, just visit our booth, and it is located at the marketplace. That's all. Thank you, po.
Thanks so much, Rex, and thanks for highlighting the importance of gender-inclusive anticipatory action, which I've heard a couple of rounds here over the past few days at the Asia Pacific Ministerial Conference. Now, thank you so much to our youth team, really inspiring stories for us to kind of springboard from, breathing some life, some youth life into our next kind of session that we have rolling forward. And what will we be discussing next, Raymond?
Next, we're going to look a bit more at institutionalization, again, from a government perspective. So how can we make sure that AA is not just a project, but really that it is integrated into the disaster risk management plans and policies of governments?
Exactly. So I would like to welcome to the floor and to the stage, I should more say, our next panel of speakers. So Dr. Yanti, Mr. Kindabong, Mr. Offa, and Mr. Idris. Can you kindly join us on the stage? But in the meantime, Raymond, do you want to maybe reflect back on those 10-year sticky notes that we have out there in the crowd?
Yeah. While our panelists get on the stage, please join us on the stage. I'll go around again. Anticipatory action in 10 years. Did we have anyone else who wanted to say something? Yes, over here.
I'm Anna from FAO Pakistan. So in 10 years, my vision is that majority of Asia Pacific countries would already have their respective anticipatory action frameworks, and that solid examples of public-funded anticipatory action protocols are already available.
And I also saw there was one gentleman with his hand up over there. Was it you? Yes, there we go.
So my name is George. I come from Eastern Africa, working for IGAD. In 10 years, I would like to see more collaboration, more coordination from actors working on the anticipatory action. Currently, we know that disasters cooperate more than even the people themselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. George. Appreciate that. And agree, coordination is also key. Oh, we've got one more at the back. We can squeeze in one more.
Sorry, where was that? Oh, there. Oh, sorry, what's over there?
Hello, everyone.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. My name is James, and I am a co-owner of a startup for waste management. And this is my vision for 10 years for now. I wish that the loss and damages funds will be operationalized for early warning systems and incorporating with predictive analytics to prevent or preempt natural disasters in the Asia Pacific.
Thanks so much. Some really interesting 10-year visions. And it's just important for us to continuously reflect on that and where we want to go as a community. But I feel very lucky to be standing on the stage now with 4 very experienced government officials. And I'm pleased to invite Dr. Yanti, so thank you very much for joining us today, who's the Deputy Minister of System and Strategy for the National Disaster Management Authority in Indonesia. Mr. Offa Fa'anunu, he's the manager of the Weather Ready Pacific for the Pacific Regional Environmental Program. We have Mr. Kandivavong Langrath, who is the Deputy Director, General of the Social Welfare Department and Ministry of Labour and Social Welfare in Laos. And then, of course, we have Mr. Mohammed Adris, who is the Member for Disaster Risk Reduction with the National Disaster Management Authority of Pakistan. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for being here today and kicking off this conversation. So as Raymond was mentioning, we're going to be looking at mainstreaming anticipatory action or pathways for institutionalization. And Dr. Yanti, I would like to start with you, if that's okay. We know that Indonesia is a bit of a powerhouse when it comes to disaster risk management, and you've been making some great, I think, strides when it comes to early warnings, looking at anticipatory action and how that can be integrated into your disaster risk management systems. I wanted to understand a little bit about what's going on, but also where you would like to go with this approach and how you see it moving in the future in the Indonesian government. So over to you, Dr. Yanti.
Thank you, Catherine, and also ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests. I would like to start 20 years ago, 2 decades that happened in the Indian Ocean tsunami, impacted mostly in Indonesia, in Aceh, when all the Indian Ocean impacted 250,000 people are missing and killed, and Indonesia have been impacted. More than 127,000 people have been casualty and missing. That time was where we have the wake-up call for Indonesia, especially the readiness, the preparedness, the anticipatory that we'll be talking in this session. This is a very important session. We don't want to have another more impacted people. We don't want to have more loss of livelihood. We don't have to have more people loss of life in the future. So how can we really put this into our policy plan? How can the regulation actually as the umbrella? So 2004, the wake-up call was there, and now we're facing the future crisis. We're facing a systemic risk, where the risk is actually a cascading and collateral impact. We cannot just say one single risk. We're talking now about multi-hazard early warning system. We've been facing many disasters that happened in the country. I can share you that last year we've been facing more than 5,000 frequency of disaster. 95% is about hydrometeorological impact, might be also as a climate change. But disaster that can kill us is more in geological impact, which is earthquake and tsunami, where there's no yet now an early warning system for earthquake. So how can we really deal with this, and how I can really see that anticipatory action is very important. I would like to share you also the experience of the GPDRR that have held in Indonesia, Bali, 2022. The outcome document impacted mentioning about sustainable resilience, combining all the climate change, disaster risk reduction, and SDGs. We cannot work alone. How anticipatory action actually related on that one. So with this, Indonesia had put this resiliency as a very local issue. That's why community is very important. Sustainable resilience is about people-centered. How to put people resilience. It's not about only how to cope with the disaster, readiness, early warning with the 4 pillars, but how to bounce back in their livelihood. Livelihood means 3A, asset, access, and activity. If one fisherman lost their activity as a fisherman, if a fisherman lost their boat, if a fisherman lost their access to market or access to resources of fish, then they have been impacted of the livelihood. So this is why importance on how to put the people center in reality of resilience. Indonesia and archipelagic state, we are a very wide range of islands, 70,000 more islands. We have 280 million people living in our archipelagic states, which is impacted with the tectonic plate of 3 tectonic plates always moving. That's why how we can really see that anticipatory is very important. We have been developing the risk map with a scale of 150,000. Some are already 1.5,000, especially for the villages to be ready. How can the people, the community ready and to understand how to be safe from the hazard itself? So we think the early warning system is one of the things that is really important, but it's not only the early warning system, but actually the behavior, the understanding, and the literacy for the next generation to generation. So Indonesia is taking place how put really into the plan until beyond 2030. We try to put all this global agenda, climate change, disaster risk reduction SDGs into President Decree until 2045. Why 2045? This is at least we try to reach the national resilience after 100 years of independence of Indonesia. So this is our target. We try to put this into the policy plan. We put anticipatory action into policy plan. We put every 5 years into the national disaster management plan. And every 5 years is a mandatory that every province and local government district must have a disaster management plan that is embedded into the national plan and on the local plan. So this is how we can really see the umbrella as from the wake-up call 2004 until 2024, and moving forward 2025 until 2040, 2025 until 2045. Thank you, Catherine. I think that's...
Thank you so much, Dr. Yanti.
share.
Yeah, round of applause. Thank you very much for that insight there. And what I'm taking away from this as well is the importance of integration into policy and disaster risk management plans is important for mainstreaming and bringing anticipatory action to life. So thanks for really highlighting that in the architecture in Indonesia. Raymond, I might hand over to you to introduce our next speaker.
Yeah, we wanted to go to the Pacific and talk with Mr. Ofa a bit about either the Weather Ready Pacific project or what SPREP is doing in terms of making sure that all the different triggers that you might develop, how can you make sure that they are harmonized or institutionalized? What are the steps that you're taking or would like to see being taken to make sure that anticipation is mainstreamed?
Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me to speak to this topic. I'm no longer a government official. I used to be director of the Tonga Meteorological Services until 3 months ago, and now I'm with SPREP managing this Weather Ready Pacific. But I guess from talking from my previous experiences, and I've heard a lot of mention of traditional knowledge being mentioned in this room this afternoon. It's something that's part and parcel of our early warning systems in the Pacific Islands for a very long time. That's how we actually settled the Pacific, is by going there and staying there and experiencing all these harsh elements of nature. After a while, you learn to anticipate, and it becomes a part of the knowledge base of where we live. But nowadays, we've sort of, because we've stopped traveling from island to island using the stars and the developments that have happened, we've lost a lot of this resilience that we have in our knowledge of how do we anticipate things when they happen. That's the side of anticipation that we sort of have partially in the Pacific, not the modern, more funding-based anticipatory action that we are talking about here. But I'd like to, just from the background of meteorology, talk about as well on the importance of, now it's becoming very, very important that the forecasts are accurate. You all know that in the past, coming And up till now, when it rains, when it's not supposed to rain, you just throw your hand up, oh, the Met Service has done it again. Now, when there's no more room for these uncertainties. The uncertainties will still be there, but it has to be minimized in order for anticipatory action to be done properly. I've been sitting there imagining, because we haven't done this in the Tongan government, and many of the Pacific Islands still have not gone through to this anticipatory action, because impact-based forecasting has not been done yet. And this is why the Weather Ready Pacific program was established by the leaders of the Pacific Islands 3 years ago to put together a program that will enable the Pacific Islands to put in place all the necessary meteorological instruments, all the hardware, training of personnel, to upgrade the Met services to a point where we can participate with the rest of the world. At this point in time, we are still trying to put instruments in the ground. Our vast oceans, there's no instruments out there. So we are not qualified to talk about AA in the Pacific in terms of what we are doing here. Fiji has talked about where they are what they are piloting. They are a little bit more advanced than the rest of the Pacific. They have weather radar. How are you able to forecast when the cyclone is going to be near your island when you don't have a radar? Or how do you know that the rainfall amounts that will fall from the sky and will cause the floods that will kill people when you don't have a weather radar? So this is why this very important program was established to empower the national Met services in the Pacific. And we've been working together with WMO, UNDRR, as this is also the vehicle that will be used to roll out early warning for all in the Pacific. So there are a number of countries, 5 countries that were selected, and we're working together with WMO and UNDRR, doing the national consultations to establish their national roadmaps and strategies on how we are going to fill these gaps. And AA is part of these things. But that doesn't mean that our governments don't do any anticipatory action. We do have, a lot of the governments in the region have emergency fund, which we tap into when disasters happen, but it's usually normally reactive. In Tonga, we've only gone as far as, we've had some success in getting, issuing state of emergency at least 12 hours of daylight time before the arrival of a tropical cyclone. But this is done with a lot of anticipatory action and a lot of uncertainty. But we do it because of, especially when it becomes severe cyclones, category 3, 4, and 5. We give as much time as possible by issuing a state of emergency for people to move out of harm's way. Tsunami, the Tonga Trench is 200 kilometers away. Tsunami is the major threat for us. If you ever come to Tonga, go and visit the biggest tsunami rocks in the world. It's there. You saw the volcanic eruption that happened from Hunga Tonga, Hunga Hapai, and but those are very, very close. to us. Within 10 to 15 minutes of any event, the waves will already be on top of the islands. So instruments and observation systems are very critical. We look, with already is still fundraising. We've got about 30 million US dollars to start off. But eventually the target is close to 20 million US dollars. Half of that is targeted for infrastructure. But we are getting there. We're trying to be part of the anticipatory action conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Ofa. And I think you've made some really great points there about traditional knowledge, impact-based forecasting, but also connecting this whole conversation to the early warning for all. So thank you for really bringing us back full circle as to why we're here today and part of this fora as well. It's really important that we centre our discussions as well in this important global initiative. So thank you very much, Ofa. So we're on to our next speaker now, Raymond, I believe.
Yeah, we want to go over to Lau PDR.
Lau PDR. So yes, Mr. Kintavong, you've been relatively, I think, busy with anticipatory action over the past few years, which has been great to see. You were noted as a newcomer a few years ago, but we've really seen Lau step into the anticipatory action arena with great confidence and some few activations that you now have under your belt there. I want to pass the floor to you about how you think about anticipatory action and what that means for the government and moving forward in Lau PDR for your disaster risk management system. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you. First, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, the casting. I'm from Laos, yeah. For the National Strategy on Disaster Risk Reduction 2021 to 2030, enhancing proactive measures in disaster management and investing anticipatory action. The Lao PDR Resilient Framework 2022-2025 underscore the importance of the anticipatory action and the enhanced community resilience, protect vulnerable population, and promote sustainable development. Efforts are ongoing to the integrate anticipatory action with the existing social protection system. Lao PDR has development and the anticipatory action plan 2024 to 2025 with the technical support from FAO, and the technical working group has been established to support the implementation of this plan. Support by development partner, the government has been working to enhance the capacity of officials to integrate anticipatory action into the getting collective the instrument and the program. And anticipatory action are central to Pillar 4 preparedness and response capacities with the focus on the improving readiness and the operational capacity to the prepare community for the potential hazard potentially. Early warning system for on roadmap 2024 to 2027 of Lao PDR outline specific activity to mainstreaming anticipatory action to National Disaster Risk Reduction Action Plan climate finance framework. Ensuring anticipatory measures are the integrate to the disaster preparedness effort. Anticipatory action are the integrate into a multi-hazard early warning system in Lao PDR, ensuring early warning are the actions above and the leader to the preventing measure we ahead of the anticipated disaster. While Lao PDR has taking the specific step toward integrating the anticipatory action into disaster risk reduction and response forward climate change remain include resort the climatation in institutional capacity gap data evaluationally and technical constant in our country, but nevertheless, the country is the plan to continue integrating the anticipatory action into the legislative framework in the coming year. Yeah, for Lao PDR, I have the want to share with idea for something we for experience have. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Really interesting insight there as well. And bringing us back to, again, early warning for all, and seeing those national roadmaps that are also being developed help pave the way forward and see that connection between anticipatory action and that approach as well. So thank you very much for your kind insights. Raymond, over to you.
Yeah, we wanted to go to Pakistan, or have the honor of having Mr. Mohammed Idris here from the National Disaster Management Authority. I mean, given, for example, the recent flooding that you had, right, 2022, how do you see steps taken towards institutionalizing anticipatory action in Pakistan, either at the government level? I also know there are efforts on the way to have a national anticipatory action framework. What are your thoughts on crucial steps?
Thank you. Thank you, dear colleagues. I think you have been attending different sessions and it's all knowledge sharing. We have also learned a lot from our colleagues from other government institutions and also not-for-profit, civil society and NGOs. What we have learned in Pakistan, unfortunately, we have also learned it the hard way, as my colleague from Indonesia mentioned. In 2005 earthquake, we established institutional structures to deal with disaster management. Then 2010, and unfortunately the last floods, they were so huge that, you know, we just sat down and started understanding how to, you know, what to do, how to mitigate risk, because we somehow have to live with all these hydrometeorological events. We cannot always cry for we are least emitters, but we have to do something ourselves. So what we did was we also worked on institutional systems. We also worked on policies, plans, and actual communities' engagement or government departments' engagements. On institutional side, we established a National Emergencies Operations Center. That is a hub of all technological-based forecasting, monitoring, and then on the basis of exposure analysis, on the basis of that, we have established, we have started working on anticipatory actions. And we learned from different development partners, thanks to them for their initiatives like FAO and WFP German Red Cross and World WHH. With their interventions, the understanding for anticipatory actions kicked off. We started, we thought that unless and until the government takes the lead, it is very difficult to make a difference. And that is why we made it part of our policies and planning process. The National Disaster Management Plan 3 has dedicated interventions on anticipatory actions. Our policies are also National DRR policy. We are in the process of reforming our policies and legislative structures. Though we have a very strong law, and that empowers us to take actions or give directions on threatening disaster and disaster situations. So it gives us that legal power. But what we did was that we started learning how anticipatory action framework will work, what other jurisdictions or what other countries are doing. We learned from Philippines, from other countries in the region that have similar challenges like us. And thanks to the development partners or the UN organizations that helped us. Now what we did was that we have created an institutional structure first within at a national level. And it's called National Coordination Forum on Anticipatory Action. We had detailed dialogues, national dialogue, provincial dialogue, and that has become now our normal feature. We conduct this national dialogue on yearly basis, where we take a stock and have in retrospect we look at what we have done and how best we can do in future. So under this National Coordination Forum, we have then created 5 subgroups. And we are now engaging all, and it's being chaired by the National Disaster Management Authority. The 5 subgroups, thematic groups, are chaired with NDMA by FAO, WFP, WHH, and other humanitarian partners. These are on capacity building, triggers, on financing solutions, and other experience learning also. Now we have started training of and capacity building of not only at the national level of the stakeholders, primarily at the ground level of communities and the local government, the district government authorities on how to take these measures. We have also developed a national guideline for anticipatory action, and where we have delineated roles and responsibilities and specific actions that are required to be taken by, for example, communities, the government agencies at the local level, the responders, the meteorological agencies, the irrigation departments, the national level and provincial level. All these are suggestive actions to take. And I would like to share with you very interesting experiences. These further strengthened our resolve and our commitment to implement these anticipatory actions and its protocols and its frameworks, and further develop the framework at a national level. Then we are planning to develop it at the provincial level and then at the local level. I would like to quote 2 examples, and I normally do that. This is, we had a cyclone Biparjoy. I'm just trying to put across the argument of when the government takes the lead, then it is a sort of a whole of a nation approach, and then it makes real impact. So there was a cyclone Biparjoy, which was we started, and for it you need to continuously strengthen your forecasting capabilities. We were monitoring this from development till all its path, and then on the basis of our technological based common operating picture that we have developed, we marked the areas which are in the red zone. And then we evacuated over 83,000 people from those areas just 3-4 days before the landfall of the cyclone. And thanks God, it diverted its path a bit. But this time, we evacuated those 3-4 days back before, established camps, sustained them, and when it was over, we brought them back. And we didn't lose a single life. Similar cyclone in the same area in 1999 had hit us, and we lost 6,200 people at that time. Then we have our eastern rivers, which are normally dry because we, under Indus Water Treaty System, we have with the Indian side, we have an understanding on that. So those fall in the Indian rights. So somehow, since these are relatively, they have less water, people have encroached in the river beds. And we had last year a significant forecast. Prompting on that, we evacuated 4.5 million people from those areas. And thanks God, we didn't lose human lives at least. There was property losses which was in there. So would just like to share our experience that the government needs to be steering such processes, and we request all the development partners to continuously support the government efforts, and all should be working for the benefit of the communities and people that are under their responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it was great to hear the integration of your different departments also, but also then at the policy level, that was really great example. Also the lives that you were able to save, actually. Very perfect example of that. And now it is question time.
Exactly. Before, gentlemen, you leave the stage, we would like, as we were doing with our first panel, to understand any burning questions that you have about anticipatory action that you would like the room to discuss in our next segment. So, Dr. Yanti, is it okay that I pass the floor to you for your question to the group?
Okay. Actually, the challenge for us as an archipelagic state, and we have many islands also, like the Pacific. I think we have the similar cases, like also in the Philippines. We really want to have the community resilience. And how can we really see that the reliable, localized forecasting model, particularly at the local level, also on slow onset disasters, should be there and ensure the participatory action is timely and effective in saving life and reducing economic loss, including the livelihood. I think this is one of the important questions that we're facing, especially from the government, to understand the community level. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Yanti. I was just checking that at the table you got the question. Cool.
Okay.
You can go a little
okay,
slowly.
slowly, because it's slow onset disaster. I forgot what I asked. Okay. As a government, we're facing a future crisis. Maybe it's a different one. And in archipelagic state, we want to have the real resilience community in the future. How can we really see that anticipatory action is really timely and effective for saving life and reducing economic losses, including livelihood, due to the precise forecasting model, particularly on slow onset disaster? Because now we're also the scale of the, for example, meteorological projection, also how is the scales really, it can be impacted for the community level, and how they can really understand on system resilience. I will add on, because it's climate change, disaster, and SDGs. Thank you.
Excellent question, and I really like that community resilience aspect. Thank you so much. Mr. Offa.
Thank you. Thank you. I mentioned earlier that the Pacific Islands are in the process of developing the AA strategies. And one of the issues that came up in one of the workshops that I attended in Tonga was how do we finance these payouts to people, especially people from developing countries and small island developing countries. Because the governments don't have this money to pay out. So one of the interesting things that we proposed from our side, because we know that our forecasts are not good enough at the moment, we cannot afford to do this no regret approach where you keep paying out when your forecast is wrong, because that will just cause more damage than what is going at the moment. But one of the strengths that we have in the Pacific is our diaspora, our people that live overseas, in Australia, New Zealand, the United States. Because the Pacific Islands live a very communal lifestyle, your family is extended family. It's not just mother and father and children, it's grandmothers and grandfathers and great-grandfathers and great-uncles and everybody. There's about 2,000 people in the family. So they are part of this, the family is overseas working. And they send back money to the families back home. When we talk about sustainable financing, these people are already sending money back on a daily basis, on a weekly basis. More so when the disaster comes. We wanted our strategy to sort of look into this and to see how we can maybe work with the diaspora to provide, when do you give the money? When the forecast is or a disaster comes. If we are able to provide that and give them that information, this is the time that you go to the Western Union and send your money to Tonga, because the cyclone will be here in 2 days. This is sort of the sustainable approaches that we are looking to do. But we also have a lot of other questions about the financial approaches that we should take. And that is probably one of the questions that I would have is, what other financing mechanisms that will be useful for small island developing states to roll out the AA? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that is very good and relevant question on the financing part, of course. Then we'll go over to Mr. Idris for your question. What is your question to our technical experts?
Thank you. Money is a big problem, isn't it? money is a big problem. And while it's more relevant to that, and I have other questions, like, what is anticipatory action? That is also a question. People have different answers for this. And one of the major problem is that government would understand it differently. In Pakistan, communities would understand it differently. The development partners understand it a bit differently. And in Sri Lanka, the government would be understanding it a bit differently. Their communities would be done. So there are questions like, what is anticipatory action? Is it DRR or it is response or what it is? But my question would be how, we always think of the community's resilience. How can we make communities sensitive to helping themselves, at least for this financing part of it? How can they create pool funds of their own? Communities would be spending money on different things, and I tell you, our communities have specific priorities and they can raise funds very quickly for those. For example, if a mosque is being built in the community, they all would gather together and they just build it. The government normally doesn't make or build such community infrastructure. But then why can't they do similar financing or budgeting of their own by pooling their resources for financing anticipatory actions? That would be my question. Thank you.
Yeah, what is the incentive for localized funds for AA? Right, very good question. Then we'll go over.
Thank you. But for me, yeah, the implementation of AA, we have a short time to the implementing, and we don't have to the notification for early warning system. What how to do, and AA can help save life to the government, to the decision to make the provided from the financing for something, yeah, for mainly, yeah, for finance, yeah, I think, yeah, for my concern, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's really important to see how early warnings and anticipatory action can be linked to that financing element as well. Very much connected, I think, across all of us is where does the money come from and how do we use it? And it's always a tricky one, but also an important one. It may get a little uncomfortable because in my culture, it's also very uncomfortable to talk about money. But it's also something we need to be uncomfortable but happy to speak into. Thank you so much, to the four of you. But please, another round of applause for our wonderful speakers today, and thank you for sharing your insights. They were amazing and provide a really great pathway for us forward. Please go and take a well-earned rest and seat for the rest of the session.
Can I?
Yeah, Raymond, sorry, I'm talking too much. Over to you.
I just wanted to take the opportunity to make an announcement to the listening room. So I'm talking straight into the camera. So if you're sitting in the other room listening to this, please come here because we're going to do some group work and discussions. So if you're on the other side there, please join us on this side. There are seats available here. The other announcement, if you have an invitation for the Anticipation Aperitivo, please join us to take the bus at 6:30 outside the main entrance. It is a yellow bus. If you don't have an invitation, please come to me.
And I see now we have had the room thin out a little bit, but I expected that. It's what's the time now, by the way?
It is, 5:20.
It's 5:20. It's beyond our work days, isn't it, everyone? And I respect that.
On the third day of the
conference.
On the
third day of a conference, what a slot to be in. But thank you all for being in the trenches with us and willing to kick this out a little bit longer. We've only got another 30 minutes or so we're not going to take too much of your time. As Rayan was saying, if you're in the listening room, please come on in. We've got some seats up the front here because we're going to be moving away from panels and listening. So we're going to now be putting that Q&A session back onto you in the room. So we're going to have this last part just for us to have a bit of a dialogue, a bit of a conversation together. We've had 7 great questions, I think, come through from the different government counterparts today that really get us thinking about community engagement, about financing, which is really good to hear where they have maybe some sticky issues that as a community in the technical practice that we need to fulfill. Even going back to the basics, what is anticipatory action? Some people are still confused. After about, I would say, 9 years of it being active in the region, that's a long time for people to still be confused. So we've got to wrap our heads around some things. So we have 7 tables, 7 volunteers, and they've done a great job at jotting down those questions. What I'd recommend, if you're not at a table with someone with a number with a question, for you to migrate there. Okay, maybe we get number 1 to stand up, and so if you migrate to number 1, this is the question from our Fiji colleague. Number 2 to stand up. Who's number 2?
Number 2
number
over there.
Number 2 is from Mongolia over here. Number 3 is here. They're going to move, they're migrating themselves to this one here. 4, where are you guys? Down the back there. 5, where are you? Right there. 6, where are you? There we go with Joachim. And then number 7, Narendra down the back. So please migrate to one of these tables. We just want to have a really light, fun conversation to really get into these government questions.
Because these are the questions from the governments, right? So we should really be able to answer those as well. And
Exactly.
again, please come from the other room if you're there.
Maybe we can
this
go and
is
grab
much
them
more fun.
while people start talking. We can go and grab them. Cool. We'll take around 10, 15 minutes, and then we'll have a little bit of a conversation as we come back. But yeah, thank you all for sticking around so late at night. literally like on the start, you go, and I had nothing prepped, tested, nothing. It was super annoying. Like I couldn't give them my presentations. Like here, I've got no issues, and I know that my presentations won't go up anywhere. Like my computer's not being used. People have got other things. Runda was really good actually. She just dealt with all the youth stuff and the points and stuff, which I appreciated. Huh? Like, if someone's taking care of it, I'm happy to have a little like that. How many times is the bear mentioned? So we do not write any of the talking points, and that naturally comes. We're just very close with governments. You know that. But next time we should have ministers like for finance.
I know, I'll say that.
Yeah. We need to do that next time. Yeah. What isn't going to work and what is going to work with anticipatory action? What are the current barriers that we're staring at? Where do we do that? Where do we do that? Daniel's got a going around table, but I just like mentally, can I do it? I don't know. And there's only 4 that showed up last year. No, next year. Yeah, he wanted it in December, and I was just like, I'm sorry, I don't think we can do this. I have like, there's so many events going on at NAO as well. I have like this huge land and water things going on that I can support time on. It's like, huh? Yeah. Chase. All right, guys, we'll give you another 5 minutes. We don't want to keep you hostage here too long. We want you able to enjoy your evening. So yeah, just another 5 minutes or 2 or 3 minutes to wrap up. Not going to come? Is he not going to come?
We are, I think.
Yeah, because Gabby's just playing that one. I'll go to that. So it's got like Philomena's. What's the weather that we're in? I feel like we should do some sharing now. All right, well, we might start moving towards sharing from the groups. Is anyone ready?
Yeah, we'll come around. Just a quick.
A wrap around.
So, I'm coming here to the back.
Oh, good. All right.
Oh, there's someone ready. Okay.
Table 7's ready.
Yes. So the group 7 starts. Thank you very much for the contributors, though I don't know you by name, but I know which organizations many of you represent. The question for this group was from the Pakistan NDMA member. So how can we sensitize communities to create pool funds of their own for financing anticipatory action? But the reflections that came out from the group is that communities, I will make 3 points because there are a lot of things discussed. Communities are already doing something on their own. Maybe small funds available for their health benefits for people who are in need in the communities. So it was thought by the group that can anticipatory action be also included as part of it? So then there was a question raised that can we force community to spend that money for anticipatory action? Because they have actually made that savings. There is an example for Philippines called Community Savings Group. So can that community savings group invest in AA? Rather, there are more important things than AA for which they have created the funds. And another very interesting thing that came out that communities who doing the things they're doing on their own are sometimes considered as in-kind support. It doesn't have to be always money. But if we give a value to that in-kind support, that can actually be considered as pooling of funds for anticipatory action. Thank you.
Thanks so much. I think that's a
Thank
really
you.
important point. Like Mongolia did the Hodder and Fay. I always do that. Hodder and Hay reserve reduction. And that was like a set, preparedness and response package that they had, but then they moved to anticipatory action with it. And then they also then connected to the community, and the community leaders then also paid off the other 50%. So we can see that actually happening as well, both in kind and cash. So great points from that table. Wanda.
Yes, our table will going to do jointly, me and Jyoti. So from Raditya Jati, the government of Indonesia, building resilience, community, and the future. So it's kind of like two parts of the question, how anticipatory action can support saving losses through precise, localized, forecast-based model, and how community can understand and use it for building resilience. We have a very interesting discussion, everybody contribute, and my colleague Jyoti will share it.
Thanks, Wanda. So this is a very tough question which we can discuss for a day. But I will break down into a few points what our group has discussed. So the precise, localized model. So that is the main thing which was highlighted by Dr. Jati. So the main issue with to reaching this is the limitations of science, because science can only address to some extent, whether we also discussed about impact-based forecasting models. So there is always a limitation. So the main point is how we can bring the end users to better understand and use this information, and also better communicate the uncertainties in this so that we can reach a consensus and make use of this information for any kind of localized decision for any AA actions and all. And to also overcome the limitations in science, our team also discussed like how it can be improved, because often we can't do always assessments when we needed anything for anticipatory action. These needs to be in place already. So the data which needs for anticipatory action needs to be updated in a regular way. We can't have outdated data. We can't totally rely on secondary data, so it should be a combination of secondary data, science-based information, satellites, as well as any kind of surveys, community consultation. So all these informations can collectively improve this localized, precise forecast model. And then we also discussed about the specifically for the slow onset disasters, so especially for a drought. And our colleagues discussed like whatever improvements, whatever evidence, whatever capacities we are building in terms of science and to the community, this is not just serving the anticipatory action for a short term, it's also for a long-term adaptation. It's also for a long-term solution. So I think that's all we have. Anything else you want to add, team? Or yeah, the local knowledge.
But that's already very comprehensive.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Right. Yeah, any other tables? Yes, over here.
Thank you, and thanks everyone for the contributions. I know it's drinks time, but we had a fairly good discussion. So the question was, do you think anticipatory action undermines community resilience? And the default question was yes, because if people get the aid, they will not be resilient until the government provides them with something. But then we started our brainstorming and we listed some key factors that should be taken into account. First of all is targeting vulnerable groups. Anticipatory action is a humanitarian exercise, so we are targeting people in need. And we are providing them with tools that will then, if well done and well matched with the right early warning messages, that not only inform them about the hazard coming, but what they can do to become more resilient. We're going to build long-term resilience. To do that, we need a tool of instruments, including impact-based forecasting, and we also need sensitization. Of course, AA needs to be adapted to the context, and we also discussed about how we need gatekeepers, being this from the government or from the local communities, that direct us into designing the right activities to build this resilience. I hope I covered all the main points, but yeah, that's all for group one. Thank you.
Thanks. So it doesn't just destroy resilience, right?
We do something good sometimes.
Right, okay.
Sometimes. Oh, yes, Ernest, let's move over to you. I'll pass the microphone.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we got Orpha's question, which was how do we finance the payouts to people, especially for people in small island developing states, where the no regret approach is often unaffordable. We were also very lucky because Orpha started the answer by providing us with the use of a kind of trigger-based remittances. We had a very strange but also fruitful discussion, which was kind of marked by radical thoughts, which I think is always the way to go. And we came up with kind of three broad umbrellas of our discussion. One was around planning, one was around building trust in the system, but also in the ways in which we release funds, and then the last one was specifically around the movement of funds. If you could see the sheet of paper that I'm looking at, you'll realize why I mentioned the word strange and slightly crazy. But we started off by having a conversation around the reality is that disasters are happening and disasters are costing money. So then the conversation was around how do we move from this kind of investing an entire kind of, I want to say ridiculous amount of money into recovery efforts and try and kind of change that to being at the kind of anticipatory phases. And so then the ways that we thought about doing that were around, perhaps there's some, I should kind of preface this by saying the general agreement is that it's a multifaceted approach. It's not, it's kind of, there's no silver bullet for ensuring that we can answer this question. So there's thinking about things like a national fund, which allows us to be able to mobilize funds for this particular purpose. But this then also kind of requires us to take a step back and look at how do we build relationships with businesses, with private sector organizations, with other stakeholders to ensure that the fund is actually possible. And then we can use the triggers as an approach for kind of building transparency. So once we strengthen the triggers, there's an opportunity to then ensure that the people that we're seeking the funds from feel a lot more comfortable. And that kind of brings us to the conversation around trust. And then there were suggestions around, rather than just looking at the ways in which we release money, perhaps it's also important to figure out the ways in which we invest in the system more kind of fully and holistically. So investments into more accurate forecasting, which can then increase the reliability of the forecasting, and therefore the decisions that are then taken as a result of these forecasts. When we're thinking about planning, it's also kind of ensuring how we target the ways in which funds are being released and who these are being released to. So it's ensuring that they're done accurately and appropriately to ensure that there's a level of inclusivity. And then again, that comes back to the question of really good data as well as reporting for these kinds of response efforts. And then once we're able to kind of figure some of this out, if we're able to figure some of this out, there's an important question around what the guidelines actually look like. So how do we ensure that the provision of funds is safe, not just for the people that are delivering the funds, but the people that are providing the funds, but also those that are recipients of the funds? How do we ensure that we're investing into partnerships like public-private partnerships to ensure that the work that we're trying to do is more sustainable? And then when we kind of another thing that we need to think about is how do we have a conversation around contingency planning and what that looks like, not just at a national level, but also at kind of local governance levels. I said it was going to be a little bit crazy and all over the place, but hopefully this made some sense and that the group is not, okay, there's no one's violently opposing what I've said.
Thanks so much. That's really thorough. I can't believe you guys did that in like a 10-minute, 15-minute span. So absolutely amazing. I might cap off this side of the room. Are you guys ready? Can I hand the mic? Awesome. I'm coming your way. Thank you. Oh, there we go. Got some help.
Thank you. I don't want to go after Ernest. That was pretty phenomenal. Okay, so the question that we were trying to answer was around loss and damage. And how can you critically assess loss and damage if you can't measure, quantify, and demonstrate it? And so we started off by talking about there are actually some tools to assess losses and damages. UNDP has a tool that somebody mentioned. Some really good examples from the Philippines, national capital accounting, where you can measure the impact of hazards and disasters on communities. Examples of economic evaluation of ecosystem services, environmental impact assessments, and another good example of combining both qualitative and quantitative assessments of natural hazards. So not just the quantitative data, the hard numbers, but gathering community perspectives and integrating those experiences into planning processes, so getting a really holistic view of what the impacts are. We then talked a little bit about, with anticipatory action, and I think this is where the conundrum of the question comes from, how do you measure something that potentially hasn't happened? And so obviously, impact-based forecasting approaches are critical to this, but they're also very expensive. And we talked about the importance of really good forecasts because we felt that another underlying element of the question was how can you justify, or how can you limit the acting in vain? And particularly the colleague who talked about, you know, we just can't act in vain. So how can you offset that as much as possible? We talked about many countries currently relying on global data and the importance of improving local forecasting to improve accuracy, and that this is a really important evolving area for many countries. And the need for really good triggers, because we're talking oftentimes about compounding disasters. And then how do you ensure that the resources are in place to be able to act when things do happen? And then we also said, well, if governments don't always have the funds, what are some of the other partnerships that we and others can be exploring, governments included, with private sector and other, to amplify out the funding sources?
Perfect. That is also very comprehensive. So thank you very much. Yeah, so only 2 more to go. It is over to either one of you.
Coming for you.
Thank you so much. So our question was, how can we better integrate community-based knowledge and local practices with advanced technology and data analytics to create more effective, inclusive, and adaptive disaster risk management and anticipatory action strategies? We actually had our question giver with us at the table, which was great, from the Philippine Department of Social Welfare and Development. So it's not an easy question, and we had a very broad discussion basically on it. And we got a little bit the background also for where the question is coming from the example of the movie Moana. I'm not sure if you have seen it, where actually they show a little bit how traditional or local forecasting is happening. And that's kind of the idea where the question is coming from. And we got a great example from a community how they use their digital knowledge for actually not forecasting, but for an early action, how to protect their assets. And that's the Fisher Fox community, and when they know a storm is coming, we will normally think, okay, we should rescue the boats and we bring them on higher grounds. But actually what they do, because they don't have higher grounds, they sink them. So they sink the boats, and underwater they are safe, and that's how they have their traditional early action, how to protect their boats. So that was a really nice example of how indigenous knowledge can work. But we also discussed that, for example, due to climate change, maybe that indigenous knowledge maybe is not applicable anymore nowadays. Maybe it's actually changing. And maybe that's why we need to support communities as well in kind of understanding what is changing with climate change and finding a way of using the more technologies and explaining what's going on and using maybe also community members in explaining how maybe the nature is changing and how maybe then forecasting and early actions maybe potentially also have to change. And as part of that, maybe thinking also looking exactly into the environment and understanding how the environment is changing and have environmental assessments as well to kind of understand how the forecasting and the early actions can change. We had somebody from the youth as well at our table speaking about that actually this kind of changing of climate also is causing climate anxiety with younger people in communities and maybe taking that seriously, engaging with the communities and young people and translating also modern technologies to the communities and understanding how they can be used in this changing environment basically. So the key takeaway would be basically really understanding the local knowledge and the modern technologies and how we can both bring them together and kind of find a way of translating them and bring together to make the best out of it. I hope that kind of made sense. It was a very broad discussion.
Perfect. No.
Thanks so
Of
much.
course, thank you.
I love the Moana parallel. That was a nice one there. I love that movie. Lucky last, Raymond.
Yeah, the pressure is on you. Because afterwards we're going to go for drinks and dinner.
I can start, but you can add later. So the question to our group is related about how the EE can help the government to be better linkage with the risk financing. So in the group, we took the example from Nepal and the Philippines, but the two of the country indicated that there is a need to put this about the risk financing into the policy and also I think the regulation mentioned. And took the example from Nepal, for example. It is mentioned that there is a need to apply the no regret policy, and we really need to have a good forecasting. The loss and damage is very crucial, and also a flexible funding arrangement is very probably need to be anticipated for this anticipatory action. And from the Philippine case, I think you meant the group discussed that there is calamity fund, but also because this is more at the national level, at the province level, we need more localized trigger. And this is actually what the province of Samar already done, and also need to be cascaded through the memorandum of agreement with the Philippine Red Cross. Another voice coming from the volunteer, it is mentioned that the volunteer is there. We can help in terms of the anticipatory action to be more participative. But what we need more with this approach is actually we need to be capacitated. So this is something that we can also explore more in terms of how to build the multi-stakeholder engagement and how the capacity building also to be spread out for each stakeholder, something like that. You need to
Yes, maybe just to add a couple of sentences to this. So yeah, one part of the question was how can AA help the government with disaster risk financing? So tapping into these volunteer resources and capacitating them will ultimately decrease maybe what the government has to invest in terms of their own staff to manage disasters. And then in general, it was felt that the government can learn a lot from the anticipatory action, which came, of course, from the Red Cross and other NGOs. Learn a lot in terms of flexible funding mechanisms and how to mobilize resources from many different sources, spend it on no-regret solutions. So, for example, we mentioned business disruptions where you need some kind of insurance in terms of a wrong or maybe less accurate forecast. Yeah, I think this is what we discussed. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Johan. Alrighty, well, This is the end. 2.5 hours later, we've dived into various aspects of anticipatory action. And I counted you all very quickly just now. It's 50 of you. So thank you for staying with us and going through these really, I think, great discussions through the governments. But what are your takeaways, Raymond?
No, absolutely. Thank you so much for joining. I think it was very helpful to have the government here and really hear from them. But we want to continue that also maybe in the future with the Ministry of Finance and others
Exactly.
who are crucial for that.
I think from my side, what I've really heard is financing is really a big issue that's really, I think, pops through. I would say from my side also community resilience. How do we ensure we don't undermine it but support it is really, I think, a fundamental one as well. Impact-based forecasting. How many times did we hear that come up from the different governments too? Seems to be, so I'm looking at Ben and Joachim, the impact-based, here we go, it seems to be the way. And then my fourth one, that kind of buzzword, was loss and damage. That seemed to come out quite a lot. And we've heard, I think, throughout the conference, the loss and damage fund, bubbling away. There's still a bit more to, I think, fall into place for us to unlock that. But yeah, it seems like there's a lot of connections there. Those would be, I think, my key themes that I heard throughout the 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
Absolutely, and to be continued, right?
Exactly. Just the start. But thank you so much, everyone, for joining us.
And just again to let you know, those who have the invite for Anticipation Aperitivo, please come to the bus. It's a yellow bus outside the main entrance. It's drinks and dinners, there's no speeches. If you want to come and don't have an invitation, please come to me.
Awesome.
That's it.
Thanks
Oh,
again,
we will
everyone.
leave. The bus will leave as soon as it's full or latest by 6:30. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a lovely rest of the conference.